Hello, Bible readers. Welcome back to our channel. Today is the second episode of the entire series of summarizing the book of Fee and Stewart entitled How to Read the Bible for All Its Worth, a Guide to Understanding the Bible. This is a very fundamental text when it comes to hermeneutics. So the very reason why we need to summarize this book, because it is very important in our journey in reading the Bible. At least we have a basic and fundamental understanding of the hermeneutics. So let's proceed with chapter 2. The title of chapter 2 is The Basic Tool, a Good Translation. So again, the basic tool, a good translation. Now, so Fee and Stewart address a fundamental but often overlooked issue in biblical interpretation, and that is, the issue of translation. Since most readers do not engage directly with the languages like Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, the original languages of the Bible, they rely entirely only on translation. What is the available translation copy that they have? So again, not all of us can read the Hebrew or the Aramaic or the Greek. Therefore, choosing a reliable and appropriate translation is the reader's most basic tool. Now, key point number 1 is that the author asserts that no translation is completely neutral. Take note. So therefore, there is no translation which is perfect. No translation is perfect. Every translation is an act of interpretation, whether it leans towards the formal equivalence or the word for word, or the dynamic equivalence, which is thought for thought. So moreover, the meaning of the words can shift over time, and then making some older translation less clear to modern readers. Take note, because our understanding evolves throughout. So the kind of languages that they use in the past may not be much appropriate in our time today, in the postmodern times. So all translations involved interpretation. So Bible translators are not only translating but engaging some forms of interpretation, biblical interpretation. There are two kinds of translation equivalence, the act of interpretation. It could be the word for word, or it could be a dynamic one, which is thought for thought, and then take note that languages over time evolves. So, for example, now types of translations, we do have formal equivalence, dynamic equivalence, and also there is a third one we call the paraphrase. Now, for formal equivalence, we do have NASB, the New American Standard Bible, and we have ESV, and then you have also NIV for dynamic equivalence, and NLT, and we have the paraphrase type of translation, which is the Message. Now, Fee and Stewart outline these three categories of Bible translations. Now, the formal equivalence aims for direct accuracy in word, order, and grammar, while the dynamic equivalence prioritizes clarity of meaning in the contemporary language. While the paraphrase translations are more interpretive and expressive but should be used cautiously. Each has strengths and limitations depending on the reader's goal. So when we read the Bible, we look into a kind of translation that suits our needs. Now, there are translation issues like words, idioms, and theology. Translators must grapple with the challenges like the ancient idioms, grammatical structure, and theological nuances. For instance, a literal translation of Hebrew idiom may confuse modern readers, while more dynamic rendering makes it accessible but may obscure specific word choices. Likewise, how a passage is translated can influence doctrinal interpretation. Now, key points number 2, that the use of multiple translation. To mitigate the limitations of translation, the authors recommended reading from multiple translations. So Fee and Stewart recommend this kind of Bible reading, that we use multiple translations, I also would recommend this. This practice exposes the interpretive decisions behind each version and allows the reader to triangulate meaning more accurately. So for serious Bible study readers, this is practical and a necessary strategy. Now, the next thing is that there is the role of the translators. So the role of the translators, according to Fee and Stewart, is that their decision often involve trade-offs between the technical accuracy and readability. Now, take note that additional theological convictions can subtly shape the voices of the translators. But committee-based translations like the NIV or the ASB are generally more balanced than individual paraphrases like the Message. So take note, the points here is that number one, the translators may decide between accuracy and readability. So they will have really to consider things in when it comes to translation. So they will have to trade off between either on accuracy or readability. Theology can influence decisions, and committee translations can reduce those biases. Now, Bible readers, let us try to look into a case with various biblical translations. So we have NIV, we have NRSV, we have KJV. Now here, from Romans chapter 3 verse 25, it says, God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement. While in NRSV, New Revised Standard Version, it says, as a sacrifice of atonement by His blood, effective through faith. For KJV, it says, to be a propitiation through faith in His blood. Now, this verse's translation illustrates how key theological terms like atonement, propitiation, or sacrifice can vary across translations. Each term carries specific doctrinal implications. Like the understanding this difference requires consulting multiple translations, and when possible, the original Greek term hilasterion. So we try to go into the original Greek language, the original Greek copy of the New Testament, in order to dig deeper. What does it mean by the terms used in these multiple translations between NIV, NRSV, and KJV? Now, point number 3, read with awareness and discernment. Ultimately, readers should be aware of philosophy and history behind the translation that they use. Paraphrases can enrich devotional reading, but this should not be the sole source for doctrinal conclusions. Take note of that. Let translation differences invite further investigation, not confusion and division. So know your translation's background, be cautious with paraphrases, and let translation differences prompt deeper study. Now, in conclusion, Chapter 2 emphasizes that your understanding of Scripture is only strong as the translation you use. While no translation is perfect, thoughtful engagement with several reliable versions equips you to read more accurately, responsibly, and faithfully. So, translation choices shapes your understanding, our understanding. Multiple versions enhance clarity. Take note of that. Multiple translations. Interpretations begins with well-translated text. A quote from Fee and Stewart says, the best translation is one you will read. Take note of that. The best translation is the one that you will read. So as we grow in biblical literacy, let us honor both the original text and the effort of faithful translators. Our goal is not just to read the Bible, but to understand it as clearly and as accurately as possible. Thank you for being with us. Hope to see you in the next episode, on the third episode, on chapter 3 of the book, How to Read the Bible for All Its Worth, A Guide to Understanding the Bible by Gordon Fee and Douglas Stewart. Hope to see you again next meeting. Bye-bye and thank you.